Now, AmaZulu King Misuzulu KaZwelithini has filed papers in the Pietermaritzburg High Court to divorce one of his wives. According to the court papers that are in possession of the SABC, the king says their relationship has broken down and there's no reasonable prospect of reconciliation. The king further says in the papers that they have experienced trouble in their marriage on several occasions and had tried to restore their relationship without success. The SABC is withholding the name of the wife to protect the identity of their children. Meanwhile, the attorney of the Queen, Melusi Xulu, issued a statement confirming that divorce papers have been filed. He says he is not at liberty to discuss the merits of the case. He says King Misuzulu and his client are married in a civil union. Joining us now to discuss the cultural implications of royal divorces in South Africa is Prof Gugu Mazibuko, who is a cultural expert and associate professor for African languages at the University of Johannesburg. Doctor, a very good afternoon to you and thank you for joining us. Just to note that we are also joined by Professor Musa Xulu, who is also a cultural expert and director at the Heritage Development Trust. A very good afternoon to you, Prof Xulu. Thanks so much for joining us indeed. Prof Mazibuko, let's start with you. I mean, the importance of institution of marriage amongst AmaZulu people in particular. Let's talk about that.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mahe. Good afternoon, Prof Xulu and SABC viewers. Thank you very much for having me. The institution of marriage is very important amongst AmaZulu because marriage institution is the pillar of society and it provides the framework of family life. So it is highly valued by AmaZulu as it is the one that it builds the nation. It is where the nation is built from families. So strong families are very important. Therefore, marriage forms part and parcel of such a very important institution.
Prof Xulu, perhaps let's come to you. Just your take on that question, just the importance of, the institution of marriage amongst AmaZulu people. What's your take on that?
Well, thanks, Mahe. Thanks, Prof Mazibuko. Prof Mazibuko is correct. Maybe just to give a little bit of a background, on my way to getting my first PhD, I studied the institution of marriage and its ritualization. In other words, its perfection among AmaZulu people. When you go to Home Affairs and register a marriage, in Zulu cultural tradition, it's not complete yet. It has to be in the form of an event where Amahubo songs are sung and where the ancestors are informed and are assumed to be present that there's a new wife here. And that then makes the marriage to be permanent. Zulus don't really have the concept of divorce when the marriage has been perfected in that way, because when you divorce, you have to go back to the ancestors and tell them that you don't want this wife anymore. So it's a very foundational institution that has built the kingdom, the homesteads, the clans, and everyone over many millennia of Zuluness.
Yeah, let's come back to you, Prof Mazibuko. Just how common are royal divorces among both the AmaZulu royal kingdom as well as other royal houses in South Africa?
Well, divorce is very uncommon, especially amongst the Zulu kings. But according to historical records, there is a divorce that once took place for one of the king, the late father's, the late king's father, King Peguzulu, went through a divorce. But it's something that is not very common. But however, when we look at the statistics, because we can witness that especially KZN is ranked third with a high number of divorces that are taking place. So it's something that is becoming very common now, because as Prof Xulu has already alluded to the fact that amongst AmaZulu there was no divorce. If you marry a wife, you take a wife. If the wife misbehaves or does anything that is not according to what is accepted in that family, you are not supposed to divorce that wife. But a lot of engagements, involvement of families, including the chief negotiators, both families coming together, and then at the end, if the matter is not resolved, but the wife will remain in the homestead with the children, because it was mainly to protect everyone, so that the children will also grow up in this homestead.
Let's come to you, Prof Xulu. I mean, this is one interesting aspect amid all these developments. I mean, in the case of AmaZulu monarch, it is reported that the couple has been living separately for a year now. What ideally would have been the cultural processes behind the scenes?
Well, there would have been discussions among families, but you must remember, Maka, that I said this marriage of the king to the wife he's divorcing now was not perfected, meaning that the traditional aspects of the marriage were not performed. It remains more or less a civil marriage according to the courts and home affairs and so on. When a Zulu woman marries, she does not marry just an individual. She marries to a clan or the whole family and that clan, if the marriage is perfected. So there could have been problems, maybe lifestyle problems, and there were lots of rumors about this and that, which I'm not at liberty to divulge. But when you talk about traditions and Zulu traditions, His Majesty, our king, is currently not perfectly married to anyone. And it is said that he's going to be marrying somebody during this month or early next month. Maybe that one could become an open marriage. We still don't know, but it has been announced as such. That would be the first real marriage, according to Zulu customs, that would have happened. So when it's private, like they just go to Home Affairs and they get a marriage certificate and so on, it becomes very difficult for families to participate because they were never involved except for lobola negotiations. But in the actual marriage, the actual wedding day is a public affair in Zulu society and in many societies in sub-Saharan Africa. That did not happen with His Majesty, the King of the Zulus.
That's quite interesting, but I want to come to this point, Prof Mazibuko. How empowered are the spouses that do not come from royal houses in such a case, in terms of contesting a divorce? How empowered are they?
Well, because the divorce is handled by the court of law, so the law will determine what will take place, and unfortunately, we are not aware of the type of marriage that they have, but we think that the spouse or the queen is having a right, according to the court of law, depending on the nature of the divorce and also the settlement, as well as all the processes that will take place. But you know, this marriage is short-lived. I think it has been not more than 5 years. So we'll see what it goes.
And I want to ask you, Prof Mazibuko, as well as Prof Xulu, this question in terms of then what becomes of royal children following the separation or even divorce of their parents, considering that these are children who would probably become heirs to the throne in future?
Well, unfortunately, the matrimonial dissolution, it has a very negative impact on children. In this case, the princes and the princesses, yes. But that doesn't mean anything will be taken away from them, even when there is divorce. But they will remain princes and princesses.
And Prof, Xulu, what would be the worst case scenario in that instance?
Well, it's interesting because I think Prof Mazibuko has answered it quite correctly. What is likely to happen is this, and I can see it happening in the in future. The wife that is being divorced now has a son, and unless something happens, that son will definitely come back to claim the throne of kingship, of Zulu kingship, unless something extraordinary happens going forward. So they will not lose their royal status. It's just that, as Prof Mazibuko says, divorce is harmful, and more harmful in a traditional community or society where basically the concept of divorce has not been embraced completely. It will happen, but that son that she has is likely to come back in some many years to come to claim the throne because nothing will be taken away from him.
Quite interesting. Then what would perhaps let me rephrase this question. Would the AmaZulu King now be obliged to remarry following this divorce?
AmaZulu King, I said, is getting married later this month in what is being said will be a traditional wedding, which could perfect it, but it's got its own problems that I'm not at liberty to discuss here. I said in some other conference that maybe the Zulu King needs a very strong panel of advisors on both the issues of kingship, the administration, as well as the issues of how to build his family, because he's engaging on a very important journey. But if there's all these gaps and divorces and incomplete marriages, it could make the royal household going forward to be very weak.
Yeah, let me thank both of you for coming through. We appreciate your time, Prof Musa Xulu there, who is also a cultural expert and director at the Heritage Development Trust, and another cultural expert, Prof Gugu Mazibuko, and who is also associate professor for African languages at the University of Johannesburg.